Hey everybody, it's the Baseball America Hot Sheet Show, as it is every Monday at 3:30. Today it is myself, JJ Cooper, with Geoff Pontes and Ben Badler, and we are going to talk a lot of fun stuff today. We have a new Top 100 Prospects update coming out before too long, not this week, next week, but we want to give you a little sneak peek on the show today, and we're going to dive right into that on our first move. So we have a new we're starting to do the work to put together an update to our top 100, first significant update of the season. Geoff's been doing some of that work. We have a piece up at baseballamerica.com right now, which kind of highlights some players who aren't currently in the top 100, but could be making a case to move their way in. Geoff, as you kind of worked on that, I feel like there's a number of candidates who kind of fit that criteria right now.
Yeah, I think it's, also players that we had probably gotten some pretty good feedback from just over the last couple of months, whether that be spring training, instructs, maybe even late season looks last year, obviously, all the work that my colleague Josh Norris does with the complex leagues domestically and otherwise. But, I think we look at some of the names that are included, some higher draft picks, some guys that maybe showed something in lower levels at, maybe in a more advanced age, like a CJ Kafis or something like that, where now they're at higher levels, they're continuing the production. And I just think, this is one of the more fun times of the year for what we do, just in terms of, being able to look at some of these players and make decisions as to, how much these guys are moving up, because every day it seems like we're graduating more and more players off the top 100. So there's always spots to fill.
So with that being the question, so who are a couple of names that jump out to you that you think are going to be sliding onto that top 100 before too long?
Yeah, I think Louis Pena from the Brewers is definitely one in particular. Just the production, and I know we've talked about it across a couple of different shows here, and I think Ben, I'm sure, covering the Brewers has talked about Pena as well. Really just been incredibly productive, arguably the most productive hitter in a very loaded Carolina Mudcats lineup that includes, Jesus Mate, Eric Bintante, among others. 333, 409, 491. It's not a ton of power. Hit tool has always sort of been there. Swing decisions have been a little bit better this year as well, which is nice to see some patience develop. But the exit velocities are up quite a bit with Pena, which I think sort of, despite maybe being a little bit smaller in stature, does kind of give you some hope just with that hit tool, with his ability to find the barrel, that, potentially there's more home run upside than we had initially anticipated. Kafis is another one that I'll call out, arguably one of the hottest players just in the world in any level of baseball. He's putting up like college baseball type of numbers so far this year at AA. Just got the call up to AAA actually today. Hitting 364, 475, 591. Another guy that hits for power without having huge sort of EVs. But I just think he's one of these guys that's just really special in terms of consistently finding the barrel and making consistent flush contact and sort of getting the most out of that profile. As a first baseman, he can play a little bit of corner outfield, but he's primarily a first baseman. He's really going to have to hit. And I mean, there's another, 4 or 5 guys that I've written about, particularly some pitchers that I think could move on. A lot of exciting names. And, I don't know if there's anyone that stuck out to you or Ben.
Yeah, I want to get to Ben on this, but I'd also want to say shout out. We're glad to see you, Uncle Ted. We're good to see you, Dimitri P, as well. If you have a question, if you have a comment, we love to answer your questions here on the show. But Ben, there are some pitchers who also stand out. I know that there's a Red Sox pitcher in particular that's really kind of caught your eye in the early going.
Yeah, with pitchers, I think it's even easier sometimes to run those guys up our list or have more confidence running them up our list early in the season compared to pitchers, because we can much more quickly see the quality of their stuff improving compared to a hitter, where it might take a little bit more of a sample size to see that. And one guy who's just taken off this year is Brandon Clark with the Red Sox. It would be a huge jump, obviously, to put him in our top 100, because this guy was a 5th-round pick last year. He was not in our top 30 for the Red Sox. Granted, is the best farm system in baseball, so not an easy top 30 to crack. But man, he has looked absolutely electric. 6'4", left-handed, big time fastball. He's sitting basically 95, 99, touching triple digits. He's got a wipeout slider. Now, he's only been in low A. He's dominating hitters there. He just got promoted to high A. He's 22 years old, so he should be dominating those hitters, but he can only go where he's assigned. The strikes have been a question mark in the past. So far, that's been really good. The durability is another question mark. That's obviously not something he's going to be able to answer by the end of 1 month of the season. But if everything clicks, this guy looks like a frontline starter. So I don't know if he's going to be necessarily in our top 100 right away, but I think he will be by the end of the year. And then Dason Hill, too, another lefty with the Twins, a bit of a higher profile draft pick last year, but another guy where the stuff has ticked up with him. He's sitting mid 90s. He's touching upper 90s. He's got really good feel to spin a slider. That's getting a lot of swing and miss for him this year. He hasn't used his changeup quite as much, but he shows feel for that pitch too. So it looks like a really high upside starter there too.
You can stream live MLB games through the FanDuel Sports Network. And if you use promo code BASEBALL30, you can start it off with a 30-day extended free trial at FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. You can see teams including the Tigers, the Braves, the Royals, the Angels, the Marlins, the Brewers, the Cardinals, the Rays, and the Reds. Offer expires 5/2/25, $19.99 a month after the free trial. Cancel during your free trial to avoid any charges. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit FanDuelSportsNetwork.com for details. And we've got a fan question. So Uncle Ted wants to know, as we put together our top 100, we put together our top 30s. Do you all value left-handers? It says y'all. So I guess he grew up somewhere closer to me. He's not a yins or anything. I still work y'all into my vocabulary pretty regularly. But do y'all value left-handers over right-handers for hitters? Not pitchers here. We're talking about for hitters. Geoff, I'll kind of go to you. I think that there's kind of a yes and no aspect to that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's more important characteristics. There's great right-handed hitters, of course, plenty of right-handed hitters in the Hall of Fame and on all-star teams and winning awards. Sort of the same thing. Left-hand side, I think like you probably lean a little bit that way. It's preferred. You just assume that if this player does end up, at least when you're evaluating prospects, if this player does end up as a platoon player, he's probably going to be a strong side platoon player, seeing the majority of at-bats as a left-hander against right-handed pitching. And I do think there's obviously value in left-handed hitting, right-handed throwing players, especially in the infield. But, overall, you're not going to take somebody who's left-handed over Ronald Acuna, who's right-handed, just because they're left-handed if he's a significantly worse player. So I think it may be like with all things being equal, but more so I think when you get into like the 45s or 40 type of role profiles, maybe 50s.
But we got another question here from Mitchell Stachnik, who asks, is Bryce Rayner's stock going up? Ben, I'll let you take that one first, and then I'll probably add a little bit to that too.
I think he's already ranked pretty aggressively, and he's been on the field for 10 games. I like him. I think he's a good prospect, but I don't know that personally I would move him up from where we have him right now.
I would just add to that what we've seen so far that is impressive. It's hard with the FSL. He's hitting 226, 381, 484. So there's some good and bad there. He's hitting the ball really hard. He's showing kind of the tools that you expected to see. But at the same time, yeah, I would say that this is kind of what we expected to see. So I don't think there's been anything so far that's really kind of rocketing him up the boards yet. At the same time, he's done nothing to really kind of hurt his stock as well. And I think we have another question as well from Randolph Perkins. We love the questions. We'll keep shooting through these. Hello, is Mike Sirota's stock rising based on what he's been doing so far? I'll take this one. He's a Dodgers prospect now, was a Reds prospect, was considered at one point maybe a potential first rounder in last year's draft, and then didn't have a great draft year, so he kind of slid down. I would say that what he's done so far has been great, but at the same time, he's also a college draftee who's been dominating the California League. I like how Ben put it. You can only, do what your to the level, perform at the level you're assigned to. But I would say at the same time, we would also expect to see Mike Sirota assigned to a higher level before too long, because that's a pretty unaggressive assignment for a college hitter. So let's see what, before long, I would expect that we're going to see him jump up to Great Lakes in the Midwest League and see what he can do there.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I understand
ahead,
the why he's assigned there, because they do have Josue DePaula, Zaire Hope, and Kendall George in the outfield ahead of him one level. So I agree with everything you said, but that's, a good problem for the Dodgers to have.
Yeah, this is the Dodgers. So it's like there are not many teams out there you say, like, I mean, shortstop, sure, catchers, sure. There are not many teams where you're like, hey, we have too many outfielders at the next level. There's just not at bats to go around for you. That's kind of a that's a rich team problems right there. That's one of the best farm system baseball year after year, and this kind of explains how that is. We also had a piece up at Baseball America, Jeff did as well, of guys who are further away, who are not going to be top 100 prospects anytime soon, but who have kind of stepped up, who have kind of stood out in the early going. And Jeff, I just wanted to kind of give you a shot of like, hey, who's someone who from that list who really jumped out to you?
Yeah, and I think it's somebody that one of our interviews earlier in the season looks fairly prescient now.
Hot sheet show.
With Brian Abraham on the Hot Sheet show, and sort of, point blank asked him, we had Christian Campbell who broke out. Are there any position prospects that, you think the trajectory is sort of really, heading upward? He said Nelly Taylor. And so far this season, Taylor with High A Greenberg, it's been one of their better hitters. Still a little bit of strikeouts, but, getting on base, pretty athletic. There is some power there as well. The home run numbers aren't huge, but, is producing and looks like somebody that potentially could, sort of be a breakout prospect for them over the next year or so. So I think Nelly Taylor is one in particular. And then Asbel Gonzalez, if I can call it a second one, from the Royals. It's been really hot in Low A Columbia, and he's not somebody that I was all that familiar with. I know Bill Mitchell did actually have him toward the back of the Royals list this year. Just, getting on base, stealing a ton of bases, hitting for contact, almost no power to speak of so far. But just kind of an interesting profile. And, with Chandler Simpson's success and Victor Scott back in the major leagues, I don't know, JJ, this might be the new profile. It's the new market inefficiency, or these speed and contact guys that get on base. He plays center
if
field.
You can hit, I do love him, but you got to be able to hit like Chandler Simpson can. As we love to say, Chandler Simpson is a really great hitter who also happens to be an 80 runner who can steal 100 bags as well. But we'll be right back after a quick word from our friends at Foul Territory.
Todd, Father, I love the way that modern technology has changed the way that we buy, sell, trade cards, even rip packs. They're called slab packs, and they're on Arena Club. No more shuffling through everything. The common cards are all over the place. Stuff's getting folded out and all messed up. Arena Club keeps it nice and tight in your digital showroom. And then when you want that card and you want to show it off, what do? You just let Arena Club know.
Let them know and grab it and take it with you. Show it off online. I think this is huge just because the fact that you talked about cutting the corners. You want to get a card that doesn't break or doesn't have a problem with it, go right to Arena Club. They have everything you need. Easy money right there for really, really good, exceptional cards.
After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your vault for safekeeping or trading and selling. Right now, 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
So while we're talking about guys who might be moving into the top 100, in April, we have seen some guys leave the top 100, graduate from prospect status. So Jacob Wilson, the A's shortstop, Yankees outfitter Jason Dominguez, Nationals outfitter Dylan Cruz, Orioles outfitter Heston Kierstad. Ben, if you were going to pick one of these four graduates long-term to have the best career, who stands out to you?
Coming into the season, I probably would have said Dylan Cruz. I might still lean that way, but I think Jacob Wilson is making it close. I think there were fair concerns about his exit velocities, but his back control is so good. He can play shortstop. I think there's more strength projection still in that frame to continue to fill out, get stronger. I just think he's going to be a very steady, consistent, 2 to 3 WAR type guy with the upside for more.
What about you, Geoff?
Yeah, I think I never thought I would have said this a year ago, but I do lean Jacob Wilson. You can kind of only evaluate the player that's in front of you, and he's taken a huge step forward just in terms of hitting the ball for impact in the air. We've seen the home run totals so far this season, which I think for Wilson is a great sign. Playing shortstop, and has I think the most defensive value of anybody on this list, and Dylan Cruz is still a pretty good defender despite the struggles at the plate. I think the fact that he's taken a step forward and has just consistently been so productive in a variety of ways, just, as Ben cited, his barrel control, his contact hitting, his approach at the plate. There's really not a lot that he can't hit. And also playing, arguably the most valuable defensive position on the field, I think just probably makes him the choice right now. But I would say still, don't want to give up on Dylan Cruz. I think some of this stuff will shake itself out, and a couple of good months could really change the trajectory of how people are sort of talking about him at this point.
So, well, now it is time for the player to watch presented by FanDuel Sports Network. And our player to watch this week is Shedeur Sanders. And I know when you say that, you're going to go, what? This is Baseball America's, jump the shark here. What are we doing here? We're trying to shamelessly, attract the headline of the day and all that. But it's not actually that. What we wanted to talk about today is we just came off of the NFL draft. We obviously cover the MLB draft, and they're very different. The NFL draft, more popular a little bit, but also it's a draft that allows trading. It allows there's a lot more, I would say, subterfuge, a lot more reason to mislead, to lie, and we saw that somewhat. Which we saw Shedeur Sanders, who everyone watching all the public evaluations had Shedeur Sanders as a first round, maybe second round at the latest prospect. He went in the 5th round. I can tell you, I'll kind of bring Ben in on this as well, but that is our nightmare. For the baseball draft, ours is kind of the opposite version of this, because in the baseball draft, the whole world is basically almost eligible. You have high school players, you have junior college players, you have college players who are all eligible. And our rule is we know at some point in the draft, before it's over, there's going to be players who are drafted who we didn't have scouting reports on, we didn't have in our rankings. But it can't happen on day one. Day one, that first, that second round, especially even into the third, we have to have nailed every one of those. And I've had nightmares over the years of I guess is the opposite. The baseball version of this would be that a player is picked at pick 35 or whatever, and it's who is that? Which the closest thing we've had to that was that pandemic year and Evan Carter, who we did not have on our rankings, but at the same time, we did have notes on him at least. But Ben, I guess that's the baseball version of it, that we just can't. We have to have reports on all these guys. But the other thing about this is I do feel like that the baseball draft, the way it's done and all, makes it less likely that there is going to be a surprise like that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we see guys fall. Typically, it's a high school player due to signability reasons, right? So, Rock Chalowski a couple of years ago, he could have gone in the top 2 rounds, but he had a huge asking price, and he falls down boards and just goes undrafted. Well, it's not because teams didn't like him. He just had a huge asking price and said, if you don't meet it, I'm going to go to UCLA. And now he looks like a top 10 overall pick probably for next year. So it's usually something like that. Or there's some major medical issue, obviously usually for a pitcher, that would cause a player to drop. But yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of times it's the other way around, where a team drafts a player way higher than where we thought he was going to go. I mean, I think the one that stands out to me the most is back in 2010. The Cubs used their first round pick that year, number 16 overall, to draft a college right-hander named Hayden Simpson from Southern Arkansas. We had him ranked 191. He never made it out of A-ball. That draft had a couple guys who were drafted way ahead of where we had them ranked. Jake Skoll, a high school outfielder, went 15th overall to the Rangers, ranked 201. high school shortstop Cito Culver went 32nd overall to the Yankees, ranked 168. You do have cases, too, where it's worked out well for the team. Ryan Mountcastle to the Orioles being one example. But there is something to that wisdom of the crowd, right? Where, all right, yes, it can be polluted by groupthink and other factors that can cloud that approach. But if a team deviates so far off of the rest of the industry on a pick, there's, I'm sure, a chance maybe they found some competitive advantage or outworked the rest of the industry on that player who's maybe being undervalued. But there's also just a really good chance that, you're just not that much smarter than everybody else in the game.
So, Geoff, the other thing with that is the MLB draft, with the exception of compensatory picks, which can be traded before the draft, not during the draft, no pick trading in the draft probably, I would say, is a key factor. And there's less, when we're talking to teams, when we're talking to agents, when we're talking to kind of everyone involved in this in the weeks leading up to the draft, there's less reason there's not a real huge advantage to lie if you're a team that knows that, okay, that guy's not going to be in a range for us to pick. If we're saying, how do you line up the top of the board, and you're picking 25, you're not saying, oh, we think this guy's terrible because you think he's going to slide to 25. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the pick trading, and there's obviously the scale of coverage and interest in the MLB and the draft in particular versus the NFL draft, which drew, I think, more viewership than the NBA Finals did last year. That did include the Celtics, which has a big fan base. So, I think when you put it into perspective, some of that kind of plays into it. The other part of it is a lot of these guys have a very big microphone out there. So they do have the ability to, potentially impact and sway value, or, putting out misinformation probably goes a lot further than, if, anyone on staff here at BA or, ESPN, Fangraphs, some of the other publications that cover the draft heavy. I just don't think that it would have the same impact. And I think teams would probably see right through it. I think the other part of it too is just how the NFL draft in particular is covered. There's so many people that do mock drafts, the tape on players, because they're all coming through the same exact pipeline as opposed to multiple sort of different funnels into the draft, like an MLB. You have an opportunity to watch a lot of these players. So there's a lot of just firsthand accounting and rankings. And maybe some of these guys, and I don't know Mel Kiper Jr.'s process in particular, maybe there's some differences in terms of them not necessarily taking the word of scouts throughout the game, or they're just not as easily accessible or readily found at the field, etc. Through that process. So it's kind of interesting, I think, just comparing and contrasting how the two things are covered in particular, but obviously there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there's also just no equivalent in baseball to drafting a quarterback, right? In baseball, you could use your first round pick on a player who's at a position that you're already set with on your major league team, whether it's a high school player who's going to be, 3-5 years away from helping you in the big leagues, or a college player who might be up in the next year or two, where the Astros have Carlos Correa, who's their rookie shortstop in 2015, rookie of the year that year. And the same year they draft Alex Bregman, shortstop out of LSU, second overall. Okay, who cares? Move him to third base. You can move a guy to second base. You can move players around to different positions. And the timetable for when those players are actually ready to play in MLB compared to NFL draft picks is just so much different. But if you're an NFL team and you already have a good quarterback, it's not like shortstop or even catcher where you can just take the best player available on your board, at least probably not with your first round pick and probably your next pick too. So I can see why a player who slides like that would be a quarterback, whereas in baseball, if we have a college player like Garrett Mitchell in 2020, we had him ranked number 6 in the draft class that year. He falls to the back of the first round. The Brewers are picking at 20. It's not like they're saying, hey, we already have outfielders, we're all set. No, they're they're going to say, hey, this is really good value for us, regardless of who else they have at that position, either in the major league team or throughout their farm system.
One other thing that I think that is kind of worth at least noting on our end is that the way we do it at Baseball America is, this is not the Carlos Collazo or the Ben Badler or the JJ Cooper or the Geoff Pontes, draft rankings. We all have guys who we are higher or lower on in our personal beliefs than where we have them ranked on the board. But what we do at Baseball America is our goal is to try to, as best we can, reflect how the mass of the industry, how the 30 MLB teams line these guys up. Obviously, not all teams agree on every player by any stretch of imagination, but like the way I would put that is if 5 teams think that this is the number 5 prospect in the in the draft class, and another 25 think that he's number 15 in the class, we're probably going to have them somewhere around 13, 14, 15 to reflect the fact that there is that belief of both, but the general consensus is over here. Now, that doesn't mean, again, we see players in person, we watch video, we do a lot of, Ben has seen a lot of these players for years in a lot of cases. But Ben, like the thing that jumps out with that though is we have to do that balance also, which is that we're trying to, like, when we say like that, we want to reflect when a guy goes, there can be outliers where a guy goes way higher than our rankings or lower. But what we're trying to say when we do that is that's something that we at least hope that we've reflected. That's different than what the industry as a whole believes that where that player may line up.
Yeah, and that's even tricky to tease out ourselves sometimes, like industry consensus. I think it's easier to get, especially in the first round. But once you get beyond the very top obvious guys, right, like your Travis Bazanas, Nick Kurtz's last year, even in like Braden Montgomery, there can be a wide range of opinions on these players. So, there's a very big difference too between mock draft, where it's like, okay, we're hearing this team at number 5 overall is likely to take this specific player. Well, we're not saying he's the 5th best player on our board, but that's where we're hearing he's going to go. So there's a big difference too, just between the rankings and the mocks too.
You can stream live MLB games through FanDuel Sports Network. And if you use the promo code BASEBALL30, you can start it off with a 30-day extended free trial at FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. Teams include the Atlanta Braves, the Detroit Tigers, Kansas City Royals, Los Angeles Angels, Miami Marlins, Milwaukee Brewers, St. Louis Cardinals, Tampa Bay Rays, and Cincinnati Reds. This offer expires 5/2/25, so get on it. $19.99 a month after free trial. Cancel during free trial to avoid charges. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit FanDuelSportsNetwork.com for details. And we're back. And we have another viewer question which we want to take. Michael Weiss asks, curious to hear your thoughts on Charlie Soto with Minnesota. I think that this guy could end up on a top 100 list eventually. Jeff, I think we agree with Michael on that.
I do agree with Michael. I would say most surprising, impressive starts that I've seen over the course of the first few weeks of the minor league season, watching a ton of the minor league games when I'm here at the house, got 3 screens going. I continually just try to always tune in when Soto pitches. It's really live stuff. It's a great slider. Fastball has good shape and velocity. This year he's been throwing a lot more strikes. Big step forward. He kind of made some adjustments with the mechanics. And it took off toward the end of last year. I think it's maybe the last 4 or 5 starts over the course of last season. He really took a big step forward, and it's just continued through this year, and like huge stuff, like you said. And I think could be a name that could absolutely be in the top 100 conversation over the next couple of weeks.
Man, I love all the great questions we got today. We love answering your questions. And obviously, you can also leave comments. If you enjoyed this, there's so much more over at baseballamerica.com and also on our YouTube channel at Baseball America, which we post videos all week. Please, check them out. And again, if you could, like and subscribe, which helps not just you get reminders that it's coming up, but also that other people can get to see it. So much stuff at Baseball America this week. If you're interested in the draft, we are rolling out our updated rankings up to the draft 400. We'll have 400 players ranked, and we'll have reports on all 400 players up at baseballamerica.com on Wednesday. There's a staff draft over there also today. So we picked the top 50 picks in the 2025 MLB Draft. So a lot to check out over at baseballamerica.com. For Jeff, for Ben, I'm JJ. So long, everybody.